Welcome to the Irishman, Englishman and Scotsman Football Podcast. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Irishman, Englishman and Scotsman Football Podcast. Back in Salzburg, out of quarantine. Joe, how you doing?
Really good, thanks JP. Great to be here.
So you brought the weather with you as well. Fino.
Yeah, happy that the pubs are opening back up in Scotland in a couple of weeks, so yeah.
Kev, you look very chirpy and happy after Diego Jota scored the winner last night, and Liverpool are back in the hunt for a Champions League place.
Yeah, well, more to the point, but I'm back in Spain as well now for a little bit. So.
Oh, you're back in Spain? Oh.
Yeah, everything's looking rosy now, mate, and the pubs are open here already.
Some people would think you were trying to avoid Joe. As soon as he arrives, you head off to sunny Spain. Right, well, for some, lucky for some. Okay, guys, cracking on. We only have 4 games this weekend due to the FA Cup. Big games. We'll go to them in a couple of seconds. We will have a look back, of course, at last weekend, some big results and some shakers and movers on both ends of the table. But quickly, I just want to speak about goalkeepers. Last week, I had a brilliant chat with David Ford, the Ireland goalkeeper, ex-West Ham and Millwall as well, about Trapattoni, about Martin O'Neill, about the Euros, and about keeping out the Germans in Gelsenkirchen. Really, top guy, great chat, I have to say. That's available on our YouTube channel. Just check it out, the interview with David Ford. Keeping with goalkeepers, Fino, you also had a chat with a Scottish goalkeeper. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I caught up with Jonathan Gould, the goalkeeper that won Celtic their first league title in 10 years and went to the World Cup with Scotland in 98 and also chatted through some of his coaching career down at Deepdale with Alex Neil and also over in Australia with some former Rangers foes.
Good stuff. And when is that available, Fino?
Thursday this week, so in a couple of days' time.
Right, Thursday evening on our YouTube channel, folks. Okay, Joe, Southampton, defeat again to Brighton, which really didn't help Newcastle at all, I got to say. And, things they're very tasty down at the bottom now. There's a possibility, even though I really don't think it, that Southampton themselves could be looking over their shoulders now, even though they got that win at Bramall Lane a couple of weeks ago. it's that Brighton defeat. Is there that sense of fear in Southampton, or do you feel like you've done enough?
I think certainly from the reaction I've seen from the Southampton fans, they are now starting to panic a little bit because that's now 10 defeats in 12. It was an absolute shit show against Brighton. It was the worst performance of the season, and that's not me being dramatic. Ralph said exactly the same thing. We were just really, really poor. Brighton were better for pretty much all of the match, deserved to win. We have still got West Brom, Burnley, and a couple of teams where you think we could get a win or a couple of points from. But I just can't believe that we're in this position now where we're hoping that teams below us don't, pick up wins, and we're going to stumble over the line if we do. Whereas it was only a couple of months ago we were kind of flying high. So it's incredible turnaround, and I just can't quite believe that we're in this position. It's very, very demoralising.
I think, Joe, you're spot on there. It's stumbling over the line, and I can't help but think about Kev's way of looking at things where you basically need a point for every game that's left. And I think Southampton fans, you're 7 points clear of Fulham with 9 games left, and you're starting to eke ever closer to that magical 1 point per game gap. But yeah, all it takes is a couple of wrong results, and you're right there in there.
Tell you what, I wouldn't fancy that game against Burnley right now either, A few weeks ago, that might have looked like, maybe a win for you, but I don't know anymore. I actually think you'll be all right. I think you're just being nervy. I think you'll easily pick up the handful of points that you need, but yeah, just not necessarily in the next game back.
This was the first time where watching the match was generally a bit kind of shocked at how bad we were. It was really, really, really poor.
Liverpool winners last night. Kev at Wolves. Diego Jota scores against his former club. You're back up to 6th now and only 5 points off Chelsea in 4th. So, still 10 games left, and or 9 in Liverpool's case, but it's still very much a possibility to finish in that top 4. I obviously didn't see the game last night. What was the performance like?
It was pretty good, or at least it was okay. It was like it was almost the way I wish we'd have started playing about 6 weeks ago, when it all had clearly already gone off the rails, and you just sort of thought, well, maybe what they need to do is just go back to basics a little bit. They're better footballers than most of the opposition in the league. They should be able to more or less keep the ball. They should just be able to play with their strengths, and they should just be able to, trust in whatever backup defenders they have. And I think obviously, Kabak's come in, so Klopp seems to have a bit more trust in him. But he's playing Phillips there again, as everyone knows. So they're playing, proper centre backs now, and Fabinho back in midfield seems to have made that difference. I mean, not much has changed, though, to be honest. It's just that it's Fabinho coming back into the middle, putting whatever, even though they're not the greatest defenders in the world, putting your trust in them. I think the fullbacks are defending as well. So I think they've said to both of them, concentrate a little bit more on defending and just keep it solid. And I think this is probably the way forward now for the next few weeks. I think they'll just say, well, we're a pretty good side. We've got every chance of nicking a goal against anyone. If we keep it solid, then let's just do that. It's a long way from the marvelous spectacle of 3 years ago. But like I've said before, it's because the players are terribly out of form. Mane is just shockingly out of form. So what are you going to do? So yeah, they've done what they can, and I suppose there's still a chance of fourth, but I don't think anyone's getting too excited about it yet.
Yeah, I was going to say it was a fairly big week for Liverpool in the fact that West Ham lost, Everton lost, Spurs lost, Chelsea drew. So you managed to kind of make up a little bit of ground in the race for that fourth spot. Yeah.
And obviously they got the result as well against Leipzig, so the season's not over in Europe either. So they got a bit to play for, and it's sometimes the break comes at a terrible time, doesn't it? When you feel like you're on a run, or alternatively you've just had a shocking result, and you just think, oh God, we would have wanted to bounce straight back, or alternatively we just felt we were getting somewhere. I don't think Liverpool are playing themselves into form, so I think this break comes at a nice time for them, and I think they'll hope a couple more players back from injury.
It's definitely a point of concern for me as a West Ham fan, the run-in that the Liverpool have. I think there's a 3 or 4 game stretch where they play teams at the other end of the table, which again just creates that momentum going into the final couple of games of the season where, in my mind, potentially Liverpool are one of the favourites to nick that last Champions League spot.
Oh yeah, 100%. Liverpool could easily win the last 9 games in a row. They're still the Premier League champions. They've got the players just to, click and turn it on and go for it. But, bearing in mind those teams down at bottom, like Fulham beat Liverpool a few weeks ago, and they're down at the bottom fighting for their lives. So I think it's the mid-table teams that, will basically in their head psychologically be on the beach somewhere, vaccine and COVID providing and stuff. But the bottom teams definitely will be fighting for their lives. And there's so many down there now. Big winners, of course, at the weekend. I think, Arsenal, huge win for them against Tottenham in the derby. Man United, of course, the win against West Ham got over the line. Leicester hammering Sheffield United 5-0 to kind of cement their place in the top 4, even though the injury troubles they have. But that's a massive win, Joe, for Brighton, really, I got to say. And, I was like I said, nearly crying into my tea when I looked at the scoreboard. I thought, God, really? And now it's a case of this game that's coming up on Friday night. Newcastle could be into the relegation zone by Saturday morning, and that's it. Of course, Man City beat Fulham quite easily, 3-0. Normal service resumed for them after the Man United game. But I mean, I don't know when they could win the league, but I don't think it really matters. Aguero's back and he scored. There's talk whether he won't be there next season because of the fact that he's getting on a bit. Will he go to Argentina? Who knows? Burnley, of course, winning at Everton was massive. Big game. Did not watch Leeds and Chelsea. Not sure if it was a bore draw, but I wasn't expecting a 0-0 draw from Leeds or Chelsea. Fino?
Yeah, look, I've watched Leeds the last couple of weeks, and I mean, if we start to look at towards this weekend's games, I'm just ever so slightly getting the feeling that Leeds' legs are going, and the concentration levels aren't quite as spot on as they maybe were earlier on in the season. There were a couple of times where I saw Chelsea in attack and their defence was even more out of position than it would normally be. Players taking the wrong decisions by trying to cover runs that just weren't happening. Leeds were pretty good though against Chelsea, defensively aside, they probably had the best chance to score, I would say, when I think it was Rafinha had a really good shot in the second half, and Mendy just made a ridiculous save with his left hand. But yeah, I think their season is pretty much done. There's nothing really to play for. So a game like this on Friday night with Fulham that do have a lot to play for, you just never know really how that's going to go.
Yeah, I agree. I think I was looking, Leeds haven't scored in their last 3 Premier League games, have they? And Bamford went off injured against Chelsea, so he may not be available. So I wouldn't put it past Fulham winning this game, and then and then things get really, really interesting with the likes of Newcastle, Brighton, Southampton.
Yeah, Friday night, 9 o'clock at Craven Cottage, Fulham against Leeds. Absolutely massive games. And you're right there, Joe. There'll be a lot of teams looking over their shoulders, hoping that Leeds can get something from this game. Fulham, of course, beaten 3-0 by Man City. For the first time in I don't know how long, a win will get them out of the relegation zone. When you look back a few weeks ago, after maybe a few months ago, it was since Newcastle beat Southampton, but they were 10 points clear of Fulham then. And now to think that Fulham, with a win on Friday night, will get out of the relegation zone. They've been really impressive as well. They've won 2 of the last 5, beat Liverpool and Everton. And on the ball, they pass the ball so well. They're so hard to stop when they're in possession. Leeds have only won 1 of the last 5, but like you said there, Fino, they were pretty solid defensively against Chelsea, 0-0. I don't know which way this one's going to go, but the way things are going for Newcastle at the minute, really, I can only see a Leeds or a Fulham win. Sorry, Kev.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think they're really impressive, Fulham. Obviously, a flawed team like everyone down there absolutely is. Could do with some more goals, of course, but they've played really well whenever they've played. I think most of the big sides. I didn't watch the Man City game, but I'm assuming I think all the goals came in the second half, didn't they? And so obviously they must have put up a pretty decent showing. No, I just think compared to you've got the bottom 2, right? The bottom 2, class apart. Look at that goal difference again. Sorry to come back to it one more time, but the goal difference for those 2 is, I don't know, in the 30s or 40s or something like that, negative. And Fulham are just nothing like that, just nothing like that. And so I think, a slightly not edgy, because like you say, maybe they've not got much to play for, but just like a Leeds side that look like they're just not at their peak. I'm afraid, JP, there's only one winner in this one.
The thing that I would say, though, is, you expected Fulham to lose to Man City. But I think the really upsetting thing for Scott Parker will be the manner in which they were doing so well until that first goal went in, and then 15 minutes later they were 3-0 down. And the heads went down and the game was done. That 15 minutes just after half-time, okay, Man City came and won the game, but Fulham didn't put up the same fight that they put up in that first half. And you just wonder whether or not the first goal is going to be crucial here.
Yeah, I was just going to say, though, Man City can do that to you, because earlier in the week, Southampton played Man City. And for the first 20 minutes, we were fantastic. Pep Guardiola said we were one of the best teams that they've played this season for the first 20 minutes. And then before you know it, we've conceded 5 goals. So, Man City can do that to any team in the league.
You don't want to listen to Guardiola there. He's a terrible flirt. He says that about all the teams.
No, Southampton really were value for money, and then they got the penalty, obviously, to equalise, and they had a chance then to go ahead. But like you said, when City went ahead, there was no stopping them. Absolutely massive game at Brighton on Saturday night, 9 o'clock. Brighton against Newcastle. This is squeaky bum time. Brighton will be flying after the win against Southampton. Before that, they had lost 3 in a row, though. Newcastle drew 1-1 with Villa. Now, I thought this game was over. I actually just was about to throw the TV through the window when the jammiest goal of all time from Ollie Watkins hits off the defender's knee and goes in for a 1-0 lead to Villa on the 88 minutes. Of course, Jamal Lascelles got the 94th minute equaliser, which meant, now this might sound positive, but I don't like saying anything positive about Newcastle at the minute because it'll just fall back in my face. But Newcastle are unbeaten in 3. They've drawn the last 3 games, but they have been a little bit tighter at the back. They were slightly better than Villa, I thought, but both teams were terrible. This was an absolute terrible game. And Newcastle set up very, very negative, but maybe clever, in the sense that the 2 forwards, who were Dwight Cahill and Joe Linton, played on the wing almost, which meant that those both giant centre halves, I think it's Konza and the big centre half Villa have, were kind of wondering, coming out to the challenge, which left a little bit of space for Ryan Fraser, who was once again very wasteful. Jacob Murphy came on with a few minutes to go and really beat the goalkeeper, beat the defenders, hit the bar, and I thought, that was it. So, you also have this thing where I spoke about earlier on in the season. Sometimes a team gets like a boost from a late goal like that to salvage a game. The difference is with Newcastle, again, that the three main forwards are still out. Brighton are playing decent football. They've been very unlucky in a lot of games they lost. They are a threat. They're creating chances. Newcastle, I think, had more chances in the last 10 minutes than they did in the first 80. So, Wilson, St. Maxime and Almiron, news today that they won't be back until hopefully Spurs on April the 3rd. Now, Newcastle do have a game in hand, of Fulham. So if Fulham don't beat Leeds, Newcastle can get something from this. Maybe a win would be amazing. But, lads, I take a draw right now. But, I have a feeling Brighton could sneak this because they're playing better football. Joe, how good were Brighton against Southampton? Did they deserve to win, or, were Southampton just that bad?
Brighton 100% deserved to win, and the player that stood out for me was Adam Lallana. He completely ran the show. It was kind of the Lallana that we were used to watching 4 or 5 years ago, and I think he could definitely do the same against Newcastle. When he's in form, he's just brilliant to watch. And, Brighton haven't won many games recently, so you were expecting when Southampton brought it back to 1-1 that Brighton might get a bit edgy, then morale may drop, but they weren't. They came out second half and just dominated. Obviously, they'll have a lot of pressure off their shoulders now. And for them, I think in their minds, they'll think if we beat Newcastle, then we're pretty much safe. So I actually think Brighton will win this game.
Yeah, but like on the other hand, the pressure, I don't think that's off them, because if they lose this game, and Fulham obviously win on Friday night, then they're in big, big trouble. I think Newcastle will look at someone like Lallana, like they did with James Rodriguez at Goodison Park, and as soon as the game starts, someone like Isaac Hayden will smash him, let him know. I'm not really confident. Like I said, if Fulham don't win, I take a draw for Newcastle. But moving on, Fino, Sunday, West Ham against Arsenal, 5:00. Lost against Man United. Arsenal had a big win over Spurs. This game could go a long, long way to decide who's going to finish in the European places.
Yeah, I mean, for the second time this season, I come onto the podcast feeling quite down about West Ham because it's the what if. We lost to United by playing the crest and the club rather than the team that was in front of us, and we paid for it. We put Noble in the midfield with Souček and Rice. It gave us protection, but it offered very little going forward. On the other side, Arsenal played well against Tottenham, and I said last week that this past week was a big week for Arsenal and Arteta, and they've kind of come through it pretty unscathed, I would say. With Liverpool winning, I'm starting to feel that bit of pressure on West Ham to win here and kind of solidify the fact that we are really chasing for top 4 rather than hoping for European football in terms of the Europa League.
Yeah, I mean, on the other hand, it's a massive game for Arsenal, who will have got the confidence from, beating Tottenham. They themselves would have aspirations of possibly sneaking into a European place after what, has been a disastrous season. Look, I think West Ham overall are probably too strong for Arsenal as a unit, It depends really if Arsenal's big players turn up or pop up.
Or if their players turn up on time or not.
Very good, very good. Aston Villa against Spurs is our final game of the weekend on Sunday night, 8:30 Central European time. Villa were absolutely terrible against Newcastle, I thought. Very lucky goal. They've no Jack Grealish, no spark. That seems to be the way. And, Newcastle were really bad, but Villa, like I said, were equally bad. 2 big players came off for Villa with injuries, and Tottenham, of course. I've got to say first, before we go on about this actual game, Eric Lamela has surely scored the goal of the season with that Rabona. That was absolutely out of this world, unbelievable goal. But, they lost. They lost the London Derby to Arsenal. And the little, return of form of Bale and Kane and the Tottenham revival, it seems to be off the rails again. And, they're down in 8th place. If they win this, they're level on points with West Ham, providing if West Ham don't win against Arsenal. So big game for Spurs. Villa, who had all those games in hand, I think that Villa's season is really over now, lads.
I think I think this is an interesting one for Tottenham because Tottenham basically tend to beat the sides who are below them, don't they? And then not do all that well against the other big teams. So I reckon it's too close to call because they're right next to each other at the table. But it's just so typical, like you say, of Spurs, wasn't it? Because they go ahead, with that goal. It's just amazing. It's just such a beautiful, strike. Such an amazing, to have the audacity to do it. He's done it before, hasn't he? He's got form. There's a video going around on social media all weekend about it. So you just love to watch it. But then what do? They just sort of go back into their shell a little bit. What a frustrating team. Do you know what? I don't think I'd enjoy being a Tottenham fan at the moment.
I think it's interesting. Obviously they lost, and the reactionary nature of sports papers and columnists and all sorts will be to pounce on that loss for Tottenham as a disaster for their European football ambitions, their top four. They're only 6 points off Chelsea with a game in hand. They could easily be in the top four conversation. And maybe I'm sticking up for Mourinho a bit too much, but there's a lot of discussion around him underachieving if they don't make the top four. Do we think he's really underachieving for a team that haven't won a trophy since 2008 or whatever it was? They've been to 4 finals in the last 20 years. They're in the cup final against Man City. They're doing relatively well in the Europa League. They're doing well in the league itself. This is their first loss in 6 games in all competitions since they lost to West Ham. Yes, it's a sore one to lose, but I think Tottenham are probably, myself aside, probably exactly where everyone expected them to be.
I did fancy them to beat Arsenal, though, Fino, just on the form guide. Hopefully, from Spurs' point of view, it won't be too much of a blow that will affect their confidence going forward. Right, guys, that rounds up that only 4 games, and I think we've covered them pretty much in depth. Lots more to come. But before we go anywhere, of course, our man in Spain, Kev, has got some lyrical genius for us. Kev.
Let's see. 8 games to play, maybe 9, maybe 10, and it's murky as hell in the top 4 again. Not the bright lights at City with their own brilliant wattage. They were blinding again Saturday night, Craven Cottage. Stone scores once more to confound the predictors. Jesus and Aguero had gloss for the victors. 14 points clear and Pep could not be safer. Below, life's a riot with all still to play for. United okay, despite shades of exhaustion. They edged past West Ham and own goal for Craig Dawson. But is top 4 enough for the board to back Ollie? Reports in midweek say he's now in the lolly. I've no inside info, just a football civilian. But 3 years of Solskjaer, 27 million, seems somewhat pricey, but not out of place in a country that spunks 40 bill, track and trace. Perhaps they can use that fat cheque from the Tories to look into other strange mystery stories, like what has become of the form of our Mane. We can't go on calling it just the odd bad day. At Molineux, he couldn't pass, couldn't shoot. He looked more untidy than the great King Canute, yet somehow, while still playing like a beginner, off balance, he found Jota for a Reds winner. Liverpool are back. Yeah, I know, premature. Leicester 5-0 look a lot more secure, but a much-needed win means they now have a glimmer as at Everton, Chelsea hopes turned a bit dimmer. Arsenal, well, they're in North London presiding. Tottenham looked boss, but then went into hiding. Mourinho irate, that inveterate moaner, would probably censure Lamella's Rabona. 6 points off 5th with a game still in hand. It's all still to play for in Mourinho land. They could entertain us. They've every incentive. So please, Jose La, don't be so defensive.
Brilliant stuff, Kev in sunny Spain.
See you soon.
Thank you, Joe.
Thanks very much.
Cheers, Fino.
Cheers, guys.
Thank you a lot, folks. Thanks for listening. This has been the Irishman, Englishman, and Scotsman Football Podcast. Don't forget, if you're listening on YouTube, hit that like and subscribe button and keep an eye on our YouTube channel for the Jonathan Gould interview this Thursday. Thanks a lot and enjoy the games. Thank you for listening. If you'd like to hear more of our podcasts, please click on the red subscribe button on the bottom right-hand side. Thank you.